Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you. Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 11. This one will publish on June 12th, 2024, which is the date that Geiger number 3 releases at your local comic shop. We'll be deep diving into that book as usual 1 week after its release on June 19th, which means this week we don't have a book to talk about because we have something special cooked up for you, Ghost Machine fans. As usual, I'm Nick, and I'm joined by my better half, Snoggle, aka Becky. How are you doing today, Snoggle?
I'm doing good. I took the day off.
It's almost as if you took the day off because it is a momentous occasion, is it not?
It is.
It is.
Momentous.
It is indeed. You could say that the last 10 weeks have been leading up to this moment in some way. And the reason for that, Ghost Machine fans, is we yet again have some additional guests. This is the first time that we have 2 guests to join us that are live human beings and not NPCs. The first of those guests, I'm just going to give you some of his bona fides, and then I'll let you know who he is. He was a student of the Kubert School. He also at one point worked for Digital Chameleon. He's almost been in the comic book industry for 30 years, doing an enormous amount of work at Marvel and DC before helping found Ghost Machine. He's most well known for his dynamic color art, but he's also drawn, inked, and colored many covers. He's the colorist on the current ongoing series Geiger, Redcoat, and Rook Exodus. Ladies and gentlemen, Brad Anderson.
Wow. Hello, that was quite the introduction. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Ecstatic to have you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you, sir?
My pleasure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for this.
What part of the country are you joining us from? I think we've got all the bases covered right now.
I'm in Canada.
You're in Canada.
I'm like central Canada, about 2 hours from the US border, just above Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay, gotcha. And like I said, there are 2 humans joining us today, and I would love it if my counterpart would introduce the other one.
Our second guest, well, not second, an A+ guest we have today is a graduate and faculty member of the Kubert School. He is one of the most well-respected letterers in the business, 30+ years in the industry, best known for his work on many DC flagship titles, as well as Mad Magazine and SpongeBob SquarePants, which our son would be super excited about, before founding Ghost Machine. He is the winner of the Wizard Fan Award and a Harvey Award nominee. It is our king of letters, Rob Leigh, the one and only. Thank you for coming on.
Wow, that guy sounds special.
Yeah, she sounded better than I did. Way to go.
I'd like to meet him. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we're happy
I'll try not to disappoint.
Oh, you won't.
And so you sound a little bit different than Brad, just slightly. What part of the country are you from, if I recall?
I'm in here in lovely, dirty Jersey.
You're in Jersey.
On the East Coast, yeah.
I love Jersey.
Well, I guess somebody has to, Brad.
You vacation there often on the boardwalk? Yeah.
I do. We do go down the shore for vacation on occasions. Usually every year we'll go down for a week or 2.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my mom, Snoggle, soon to be mother-in-law, she used to spend the summers in Ocean City, New Jersey, on the boardwalk. Okay. So we've been down there a couple of times. Thank you so much for joining us. It's fantastic to have both of you. We're ecstatic about it. You know, when we started this thing 11 weeks ago, we'd hope that you all might just acknowledge us one day, and we're able to have an actual conversation with you. I know a lot of the fans that we communicate with on a very frequent basis also are very excited about this episode, and it means the world to them. So thank you both for taking the time. It means the world to us.
It's our pleasure.
We always do some shout outs, and this one is a very unique shout out this time. We typically do shout outs to fans, but we had a very unique thing. I don't know if either of you saw anything about this on Instagram or Facebook, But this time, our shout out is actually going to be to Jeff Johns. And everybody's like, why are you shouting out the guy that did all the writing? Well, this past week,
We wouldn't be here without him.
right? Like, we need the guy. I mean, he's important, but we're not
Pretty easy.
we're not shouting him out for the writing this time. You know, he's heard that a couple of times, and justifiably so. But this time, in the past week, we had one of the Ghost Machine fans. He posted on Instagram and Facebook with his Geiger shirt on and his Ghost Machine hat on that he was going in to have surgery because he's been battling cancer. And somehow Jeff got wind of that. And we saw this post come up yesterday on Facebook and Instagram from our friend Mike, who's now out of the hospital. He got all the last stuff taken out today, and he's doing great. We saw some pictures with his wife, him and Lisa, and he sends over this post. It's quite literally a card from Jeff letting him know to get well soon and that he's an inspiration for Geiger. And there's even a little remark sketch that Jeff did that he included in there with it. And it looked like he gave him a little care package of books as well. And I can't tell you how that's not something that you see in any other aspect of the comic book industry whatsoever. Heck, in any type of entertainment medium, that's a completely fan-driven experience. That's a creator from the very quote unquote top of a company seeing a human being going through something, but seeing their love for it and giving them direct support. That's an incredible thing to me. So
Jeff's the real deal.
What makes you say that?
He's somebody who he generally cares for people. Some people do this. It's a strategic move, but Jeff, that's who Jeff is. There's a lot of kindness in that man. So I'm sorry that Mike's going through this, but I'm not surprised that Jeff would do such a thing.
Well said.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's doing well now, so maybe
That's
helps.
awesome.
Yeah, it looks like everything. He's got to go back in a couple of weeks to get checked out, I think. But other than that, he's looking good. So that's our shout out for this week. Other than that, we do want to, since we mentioned Jeff, we do want to one more time, since we haven't talked about them in a while, just the folks at Ghost Machine Pro who have continued to support us, which has really led us to this episode where we get to actually speak with members of the creative team. And so what we have done for you Ghost Machine fans is we have arranged a formatted set of questions to ask these two gentlemen. To lead us into those questions, I wanted to bring up the Kubert School scholarship that Ghost Machine has going on. And I was wondering if the both of you could kind of walk us through that, why it's important, and then maybe lead that to discussing with us your experiences that led you to being students at the Kubert School and what something like this available to you then would have meant.
Yeah, it was really neat I think we were in Philly at dinner talking about something like this, and it just kind of happened so quick. And then I saw email went out saying this is going to happen, and I was super pumped because when I went to the Kubert School, tuition was crazy expensive, just the exchange rate and everything else. And to have something like this for your third year would really mean a lot to a student. And I think it's awesome for Ghost Machine to be part of something like this, because we could kind of, like there's students that potentially will be working for Ghost Machine in some aspects. So it just, it's a great way to kind of pick the talent and be part of their growth. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, these kids they come from all over the country and all over the world, and a lot of them have limited resources. So to get a year free, what a head start that is. We all hear the stories about student loans and how hard that is, to pay them back, and sometimes you're paying back many times the amount of the original tuition. So at least for this 1 year, they don't have that burden. It kind of gives them a boost right out of the gate. It's a wonderful thing for them. And it's a wonderful thing, like Brad was saying, and it's a wonderful thing for us. We get to inspire somebody. We get to help somebody start their career. And who knows, maybe they will work for us at some point.
You imagine that origin story, right? Like you got the Kubert School scholarship sponsored by Ghost Machine. You end up working for them one day. That'd be pretty neat.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
You're very cool.
But there are no strings. They're not obligated. I don't think, to do that.
But they would want to, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, since that's one of the reasons that we went with a third year scholarship as opposed to a first year. So now you have a student who's proven themselves for 2 years and is somebody who's seriously going in this direction. So they kind of have some idea of where they're going to. So it makes sense to do it for a third year student.
And it propels them to, completion, I would imagine, to some extent.
Sure. Yeah. And it's a nice carrot to have in front of them too.
Yeah, especially for
their contacts. These are contacts that they're making now.
Very cool, gentlemen. Thank you for walking us through that. So you both attended the Kubert School. Can you tell us, obviously, it's a school that people go to because they want to work in the comic book industry. So at what age and why did you realize you wanted to work in the comic book business?
Well, I come from a small lake town in Ontario when I first heard about the school, and I was working at a paper mill, and I thought, oh man, and I've always, like, my brother's a really good artist, and I've always drawn my entire life and everything else. So I thought, I wouldn't mind trying it, see what happens. And so I made a portfolio, sent it down there. Yeah. And then I did a phone interview, and Mike Chen was going over each piece, while I was in the lunchroom when I was working. And I was just super nervous. But and then when I got down there, it was a real culture shock for me. Just going from a small little town to New Jersey, that alone was a culture shock. But then you get, you're around all these talented people. The instructors are all working pros. My expectations were really high, and I wasn't disappointed. It was really neat.
How about you, Rob?
I was, I guess, like Brad, just from the time I can hold a crayon, I was drawing. And in fact, when I was a kid and I was acting up, my mom wanted to straighten me out. She'd, I'm gonna hold your crayons for you for a little while.
Oh man.
Not in a cruel way though. Mom's always been my biggest supporter though. But she's the one who first found out about this school. I guess she saw it in a newspaper article. The school had only been open a few years when I first went. So I'm within an easy commute, or I grew up within an easy commute of the school. And I first met Joe, I guess, when I was a junior in high school. They would have these Saturday afternoon classes. So I took one there, and I got to meet him. And I was kind of hooked right then. So when I graduated high school, my senior year, I went to the school, did the portfolio interview with Joe. And this is back in the old days before they were in their current building. This was the school was in an old Victorian mansion, which they now use as part of their housing now.
Huh.
It was this old the Baker House. Yeah, I went there right after high school in '82. And it was an experience because most people who go to an art school are coming from an environment where they're the class artist, and now all of a sudden you're with a group of everybody who's the class artist. So you're starting from scratch again, kind of figure out where you are in the pecking order. So yeah, in fact, Adam and Andy were still students then. I think they were in their second or third year at that time, but I only went for a year. I wasn't really mature enough to continue on. So I finished the year, did some other types of work, wound up in advertising for a small agency in the area. Realized I wasn't going to go too far with them, and I decided to go back to the school. So it had been like 5 years. I had the interview with Joe all over again. He remembered me, showed my newer portfolio, and he said, "You want to start in your second year?" He says, "You passed your first year." And I said, "No, it's been too long. Let me do this right." So I was one of the few guys who spent 4 years at a 5-year school over the course of about 9 years. But it all worked out. We had a good class. Nick Napolitano is a good friend of mine. He's a VP at DC. He was in my class. Dave Sharp, who's another letterer. John Kalis, who's a colorist, Steve Lieber, another artist. So we had, I think about 16 of us wound up graduating, but I'd say probably 9 or 10 of them at least had a cup of coffee in the big leagues. And there's, a good half dozen of us that are still making a living in it. So it's a testament to the school.
In that first year before you went back is when it would have been around the same time that Adam and Andy Kubert were students, just to make sure I understand that correctly.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Just tossing that out there.
Yeah.
And now you're a faculty member?
I was. I taught there in the late 90s,
okay.
early 2000s. I taught there for about 5 years.
Yeah, I was going there when you were teaching, I guess then.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I never had you as for a letterer. I had Hi Eisman was my letterer teacher.
Yeah, Hi and I were both teaching lettering. I guess they'd gone up to 5 first-year classes, so he could only fit 4 into his schedule, so I picked up 1, and then after I stayed there for quite a while, but I wound up teaching. We split the load for a while.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was funny seeing them from the in the faculty room, which is a little bit different than in the classroom. Not, they were all really salt of the earth type people, but just being behind the scenes was a little fun too, getting to know them on a different level.
How come you ended up doing letters? Why did that become your focus?
Well, it's something that I like doing in school, but I didn't start out as a letterer. So when I first started working at DC, I started as a freelance production artist. So I graduated from school. I was about a year out after school. I wasn't really making any headway, and the girl that I was dating at the time was pretty much saying, are you gonna get going? And so I called up the school. Well, now we've been married now, coming up on 30 years. So
oh, nice.
Ends well.
Congratulations.
But so I contacted the school and I spoke to Mike Chen, who Brad mentioned earlier. Mike was one of the directors of the school, and he says, "Well, one of your classmates is in DC, a guy by the name of Mike Sellers. He'd been an inker, an editor, a letterer, but Mike was there, and so I called Mike up and got an interview with his boss, who had graduated from the Kubert School in the very first class, and so he hired me. I started working that day as a production artist, but freelance. So I'd come in on Monday, work Monday through Friday. And then on Fridays, I'd go into the guy's name is Rick Taylor. I'd go into Rick's office and ask if he needed me to come back on Monday. And if he said yes, I'd come back on Monday. And if he said no, I'd come back on Monday anyway. I walked in the building. This is pre 9/11, so there wasn't as much security then. So I just walked in like I owned the building. And I was starting to meet other editors,
that's how it happened with Ghost Machine too.
Yeah, the guest who
kept showing up.
The guest who wouldn't leave. All right. So I was getting freelance from design departments, and there's not just the comic book area, but there's special projects and design. So I was getting to know people, and I just started getting work. So finally, they said, "All right, he's not leaving. We can't drive this guy out with a truck." So, they hired me full time, and I started inking for them pretty early on. So I would take work home. I'd work in the city all day, and then I'd take a page and I'd work till 2 a.m, get up at 5, rinse, lather, repeat. And I did that until I did that for about 3 years. And then I left staff. I had enough freelance inking work lined up. So I did that for like 11 years. But I've got nerve damage in my hand for, working all those crazy hours. I was like a pitcher. I'd go to bed and I'd put ice in a tube sock and ice my hand down. And, but eventually it's, there's just damage. So I couldn't work a brush anymore. Tomasi's part of the problem for that though. Pete Tomasi, he was an editor. He started around the same time I started at DC, and Pete hired me a lot as a fireman to kind of, you got a project that's late, you'd usually have like a stable of guys that you'd split up a book and do a jam on it. So it's Pete's fault. So he overworked me.
I really, I love
so I wanted to stay in the business. So, I learned how to do digital lettering. Around that time, DC was starting up their digital lettering department. I was their first in-house guy. And I always liked working with letters. It it pulled back from my days working at the advertising agency, where I enjoy text. I enjoy how that works with the visuals. So here we
Cool.
are, so many years
Indeed.
later.
We wanted to ask both of you guys, both of you have worked in like more corporately owned comics. So what are the major differences between working on something independently owned versus something corporately owned?
For me, there's a little more freedom, a lot more collaboration. You know, initially my dream was to be working on like Batman, Spider-Man, not like the mainstream stuff. And I made a career out of it. And yeah, it's been incredible. Yeah, I mean, there's times where you'd have to, I mean, they're already established characters owned by certain people. So they have to look a certain way. You can't veer off too much. I've had to change. I remember doing a couple covers, some Wonder Woman covers that I had to change just because I kind of went off thinking this would look really cool, just adding certain lighting, but it took away from some of her natural color. So I had to revert back to that and just stuff like that. Whereas here, working with these guys, you know, I've been fortunate. They give me tons of freedom. They just hand it over, say, we need this like right now, basically. And yeah, then I just kind of, you know, do what I want more or less. Well, I mean, unless it's the script calls for something different, but yeah, way more freedom for me, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah, the work itself is the same, but the stakes are different. You know, we're on the ground floor, so we're establishing these characters. So there's more decisions. We're involved more in the actual storytelling, other than our specific discipline. And there's a greater sense of ownership and responsibility. There's not as many layers of corporate structure to go through. You know, it's us. It's, you know, there's the company's roughly 20 people, so there's a lot of communication. Whereas when you work in a corporate environment, most of the times that a book that I'm working on that gets canceled, I find out about it from the news sites online rather than from the company itself.
And so we hear about, you know, folks that work for DC and Marvel that, you know, an artist may never even talk to a writer. They'll just send them, like they just send the material and then they do what they're going to do. And that's not the case with you all. You all actually communicate throughout the creative process a lot more than that.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in constant communication with one another. We have our signal chat. That's my phone is constantly
too much
pinging.
sometimes.
Yeah. You know, sometimes it's not work stuff, but a lot of it is. But it's great for just maintaining our sense of being a core of people.
That's awesome.
A good example, like I've never worked with Brian Hitch before. I've done a couple covers here and there recently, a couple Marvel covers, and then I did some like Red Sonja covers with him, but never worked on an actual issue before. So if I was working at, let's say, DC with Brian, I'd be going through the editor and basically I'd be going through the editor. I wouldn't be going
Okay.
through the writer or anything. And I'd get all my reference and everything else. And I wouldn't really get a chance to talk to the artist unless there's something specific. And then the editor would say, oh, okay, well, why don't you just talk to Brian about it? But a lot of times it's just everything's in the script. We just, you know, try to meet the deadline and we plow through it. But in this case, like I've got a chance to know Brian and become friends with him. And we get to talk about, you know, I get to tell him my approach on stuff. And it's just such a really easy collaboration, which makes it nice when I do get his pages. There's no guesswork. I already know where he's coming from. And then we could just get to work. Right.
So cool.
Yeah, and like Brad and we've worked together for years, but
25 years.
we've never
25.
communicated before Ghost Machine.
Oh, and then now we're at a convention and I'm like, oh, we should try this with the letters.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, you know, like that label you just sent me for the Devour
Right.
stuff.
Yep.
You know, like that would have been totally different. like now I can actually talk to you directly, say, oh, why don't we try some of this? We could maybe have, the lettering go in the crowd and like blur it and do some kind of integrate it into the scene more. And Rob's like, oh yeah, we could, yeah, okay, yeah. I see his
Yeah,
wheels
it's
turning.
yeah, it's going to change. I think we're going to bring it to a whole different level because of that, because of the contact and this true sense of collaboration.
That's awesome.
It,
Like, honestly, it sounds like you've been doing this a long time, and to, do something for 30 plus years and bring back like new creativity and passion, like, and ownership of something new. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, and you said it too. It's the passion, and another thing is having the group like this. Like everyone is such a professional. Like no one needs to be pushed or whatever. Everyone's just so excited and so pumped to be working on this stuff. And yeah, it's just they're just pros, like in all sense of the word.
that's fantastic.
Mhm.
This next question is a good piggyback off of that, because the most recent press release before the Kubert School stuff was about how the two of you, it was the beginning of May, and it was about how the two of you had signed exclusive contracts with Ghost Machine. Now, I understand you're founders of it, but can you tell us, what does that mean? Like, to someone that doesn't know even that much about the comic book industry, what does it mean that you have an exclusive contract with Ghost Machine?
Well, it's kind of a greater sense of permanence. I don't want to say job security, but you feel that these are my, like Hitch said, these are my tribe. So these are my ride or dies. And there's a level of expectation, but it gives us a greater sense of being part of this team. It's unheard of. I mean, this has never happened before, where you have ownership across the board at this level. For many years, it was writers, pencilers, and inkers were the only ones that would get royalties. Then, I guess within the last 10 years or so, Brad, they added colorist to that, some companies.
Yeah.
But letterers, I've had a couple of gigs where you get royalties, but not at this level, and to share in every aspect of what we create, it's a tremendous feeling.
There's a lot of legal stuff to be, part of a corporate, like a company like this too. So yeah, so once all the paperwork was signed and everything, then it was kind of like, okay, we'll announce it. So now everyone knows that we're exclusive. So yeah, it was a really big deal for me. Like I was so excited for that press release to go out, and I just thought, oh yeah, it's gonna be really special.
Yeah, because in New York, Brad and I were kind of hanging behind the scenes when they were announcing. That was the big surprise that we were announcing, and we were kind of, should we or shouldn't we? Shouldn't we go on stage? And finally, we opted to do so. But I was wondering, all right, this is going to be a while before we get this officially, going. Is this going to affect my workload?
Yeah, that's the thing. A big part of it was like, okay, if it comes out that we join Ghost Machine, then am I not going to be able to pick up any work until all the papers are made? And like, it took a while to get everything kind of finalized. Like it's a huge deal to make a company like this. So yeah, it took some time, but yeah, we were there right at the beginning. So
Rob, you said a sense of permanence. And it's also a declaration, though, right? Because, I mean, you guys are doing 3 books a month. Obviously, the work's there now. We're all excited about that. But at the same time, if a DC executive or a Marvel executive comes knocking, the answer is no, right? That's what this means. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, that's what it means. It's not quite antagonistic like that.
The answer is no, thank you.
The people that I know at DC, yeah, it's
no,
not
just
like,
tell them it was me that said it antagonistically. Not
yeah,
you.
they're not. They're like, hey, buddy, get bent. No, they're everybody that I know at DC has been very supportive, because it's a business, but it's a small industry and people know one another, and for the most part, people are very nice in this industry, and they want to see everybody succeed. I'll miss working with some of these people, and some of them have said they'll miss working with me, but we're all in the same industry, and I think what's good for one company is good for all companies. You know, as they say, a rising tide raises all ships.
Well, and that's the thing. Like we've been working for DC for a long time, so you make a lot of good friends there, and so yeah, it's just a different, different stage now. So
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I think that
And they never offered me exclusivity. So,
Well, there you go. No, I think in jest, I would say that our bias comes from the fact that we're Ghost Machine fans, and we don't want to see. If we can get you on everything, we want to keep you on everything because it's working out great and we love it. So
that's the whole plan.
Becky, what's our next question?
This one is specifically for Rob. So, how much does the writer dictate what lettering will be used, like style, font, effects, some of the letter cascading events, like the wee wee in Junkyard Joe, and the bloop from the soup can is just something we were thinking about. How much does the writer dictate that, or is that all you?
they trust everybody, it's not just like that in Ghost Machine. For the most part, you get very few, unless there's a specific concept that a writer has, they generally just trust the letterer to do his or her part. And the same with the artist. But you also get to learn different writers like different things. Tomasi, for example, loves sound effects. So I know I'm going to be on his projects. There'll be a lot of them. And we've had, these bizarre phone conversations over the years where we're trying to describe a certain sound and we're both sounding like two mental patients talking on the phone, trying to come up with the correct one. Conversely, Hitch likes to use them very sparingly. And, he expressed that to me early on very, very kindly, that we don't need to put that many in there. And that's good too. That's part of communication. But in terms of specifics, like what font to use, no, or I'm pretty much left to my own devices how to do something. Now, after I do turn in my proofs, occasionally they might say, well, all right, I was going for maybe a different sound, but they trust us. Everybody has their role to play, and so there's not a lot of micromanaging in that regard.
That's awesome. I mean, it seems so small, but the soup can, we just thought that was so cool because it was like the letters followed what the sound would be.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're part of the visual, right? So it's it's not just it's the shape of the letters. It's the direction that the letters are placed. Should go with the action. The coloring within the sound effects, is part of it. Especially now working more and more with Brad, like I do. I'll color something because I'm working over black and whites primarily until the color files come in, and then I'll get Brad's work and I'll go back in there and say, all right, I should change this to either complement or contrast, depending on what the situation dictates.
Yeah, there was one other one in the most recent issue of Rook when the rocket gets destroyed, where like there were 3 O's, and the O's in the boom were so strategically placed that like you could feel the explosion as a result. It was sweet. So
that's a technique that I like to use, where you use the holes in a letter. They're called counters for the typography geeks out there. So like the hole in an O, it's called a counter. So a sound effect can express the sound, but you can also use it strategically to isolate the action or to target a specific area of the action. So, and also, I don't think every sound effect is meant to be read literally. So if you notice my work, I trim off, I'll crop at the panel border a lot, where there's enough of the letters in there that are readable for you to know what they are. But I don't feel that it's always necessary for the reader to letter by letter read them. Sometimes they're better just sensed and experienced than read as printed word on a page.
So cool.
That makes a lot of sense, because when we're doing our podcast, we're literally looking at panel by panel, and usually Nick does sound effects over me constantly trying to sound out what the effect actually is.
Yeah, I had one writer who would, like, He'd put like 20, 30 letters in a sound effect, and I'd see that in a
Oh,
script.
really?
I'm like, nope, veto.
Huh.
Because you don't want it to be a visual speed bump. You know, have to remember that somebody needs to read this, and it should enhance the reading experience. It shouldn't take them out of the story. You know, it should be part of the story. So, you know, don't make things that are going to annoy the reader or impede their enjoyment.
Well, this next question is for Brad. In a recent video, you said that you try to follow the artist rather than compete with them. An example was rendering Redcoat differently than Geiger. What's the most jarring transition for you as an artist between the current books, and why?
I would say probably Rook, I think, is it's the most difficult right now, just technically. I mean, everything, like there's so many, the characters, all the helmets, like their costumes are so color specific. And there's so many different parts. Like one mask might have 6 different colors on it, and it's a technical, you know, it's a static image. So when I first start, I have to go through and I have to change every color to the actual character color. And then I go from there, then I can alter it to the scene and the mood, set the lighting and all that. But it takes a ton of time. Like it's going slow. I'm starting to get used to it now because I'm getting really familiar with the characters. And then when they throw a new character, then it's like, oh man, now we gotta take a little image of it, keep it on the side as reference, and then I can go back and forth. But yeah, it's a lot. So I find a lot of times I'm actually kind of toning down what rendering I am doing. I'm just really playing off lighting, you know, like a shadow, warm side, cool side, for instance. Yeah, and then there's times where, you know, there's an older mask or something, there's dents and scratches, and then there's mud and stuff, or there's blood on it, and then that's another layer on top of it. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, but I really like working on Redcoat. Like I find the character and the story I'm just such a fan. I'm so hooked on it. I'm really comfortable now. The first issue, I was really trying to find my footing working with Brian. And I think now I'm kind of really in a groove. So I know where I can, you know, where he leaves stuff open. I can really get really kind of painterly, have stuff blend in, throw some textures in, do more storytelling, stuff like that. And I've been working with Gary forever, so it's super easy. Like I know exactly what he likes, and I find it easy to render and that kind of stuff too. So it isn't. And he puts so much emotion and acting in his art. I don't want to go over the top. I just kind of enhance some of the, you know, the furrows in the brow or some of the expression. I'll just enhance it a little bit. Nothing too crazy. I don't want to take away from what he's doing or try to compete with what he's doing. So I might do too much where it changes the expression he's trying to do. And yeah, there's a fine line about, you know, you can go too far or you do too little. So
that is fantastic. I'm gonna replay you telling us about those different books and working with those artists to my heart's content so many times. Thank you very much.
And usually, and then even when I start a new book, like say I jump on the next issue of Rook, then it takes the first few pages always take a long time because I'm in Redcoat zone. I'm just, you know, working. That's all I'm working on. And then next day I got to switch over to Rook, and then it's like, oh, okay. And then I really have to kind of, you know, the train's got to get off the starting line kind of thing. But then once I'm into it and I know the story and the script and I have my scenes kind of set, then I'm good to go. Yeah. Then it's pretty smooth. But doing that first establishing shot or that first page of the scene that's going to be in the scene, it's going to be a huge scene. Getting those colors without painting yourself in a corner later on is always tricky. I've done that a few times and it sucks.
Because you're essentially stuck at that point, is what you're saying, because you're doing it so much you can't get back out of it.
Yeah, like if I establish a scene, I want the sky to be like in reds, and then the story's going somewhere, and then all of a sudden a guy in a red suit jumps out and he's going to be the main villain. It's like, dang it, I should have read ahead. I didn't get that part of script. And then I really got to push it into more of a purple and blue background, and you just kind of force your way into a certain area.
A reader would never think of that situation.
No, and a lot of times deadlines, I remember doing a bunch of DC stuff, and deadlines were really tight. So I would just I would just get pages and start cranking them out, and I wouldn't even really read it way ahead in the script. I just kind of read the scene and whatever else, and then eventually, I did one whole scene in greens, and then the next scene was in a jungle or something, and I was like, ah, dang it! Like, so I'm going from green to green. Yeah, I don't like doing that. I like that. I like the reader to turn the page from one scene, and then all of a sudden you're in a new scene, so it's totally different. Even panel per panel. I remember working on Doomsday Clock where it was the 9-panel grid, and you're in three or four different locations. So I really had to plan my entire scenes because I knew eventually they're all going to be in one page with all the panels, and I wanted them to stand out. So just a lot of planning ahead.
I know the exact part of Doomsday Clock that you're talking about. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Never mind all the characters. Every character in there too.
Yeah, no kidding. What's our next question, Snoggle?
So this one is for Rob. In a recent video, you said we do this line of work because this is who we are as people, but we don't exist without the fans, without the readership. And then went on to explain how if someone asked you to attend a con and do signings 10 years ago, you wouldn't be interested. So what has changed?
Well, I think first of all, I didn't think they'd be interested in me. That I just envisioned myself, here's the letterer sitting at a table by himself with nobody talking to him. So I just didn't think that there was any interest. But the fans have been really great. They're really they're involved, and their fans are knowledgeable more and more. So I found. The other thing is I'm not a huge fan of crowds. So if I see a crowd of people on the left, I'm going right.
I'm
And
with you there. We just went to Chicago, and the whole time I was like, I got to get out of this city.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not unfriendly. If I'm of a mind at the time, I'll talk to a lamppost, but but just when you see like a sea of humanity there, even back when I worked in Manhattan, and I'd walk from Port Authority, from the bus depot to the office, I'd be picking my route as I'm going down the road, as I'm walking down the sidewalk, how to avoid everybody so I can get there as fast as possible. And back when I was when I would go to the New York shows as not on a panel or as a guest or anything, but I used to just go check and say hey to the people at the DC booth, and then go to Artist Alley to meet people that I've worked with but never met before. But just trying to cut through that crowd, it's like Moses parting the Red Sea, just trying to I'm like, why can't you people all get out of my way? So the impatient Northeasterner. It's been a real eye-opening experience. The fans are so receptive, and the thing is, you spend your career in a room by yourself, so you generally don't get feedback other than perhaps from your editor. But to see what they enjoy and to see how it affects them, you see people dressed up as characters that you've worked on because it means that much to them. That's kind of a cool experience, and I've really enjoyed that. And it gives us a time to for the people on the team to kind of hang out with one another over the course of the day. Like usually I park next to Brad over here, and while he's working on commissions, I'm sitting there pestering him. He's a few years younger than me, but he's an old pro at these conventions. So I'm picking his brain, and I also having, I guess in Florida, having a Brad Meltzer sitting next to me and watching the way he interacted with fans. He really engages them. I like it. It lets me know that the people that I'm working with are really good people.
Well, and that's just something Rob said about. I think the first time I met Gary Frank in person was in New York when we launched Ghost Machine.
Yeah,
and I've worked with him for 10 years or something before that. I've talked to him a million times, but we've never met face to face. So yeah, it's just one of those industries, I guess, right? So, and I've worked with editors. Some editors I couldn't even tell you what they look like, but I've worked with them for years and years. It's a unique business that way.
Yeah, Gary, I probably done 1,000 pages with him, through our Batman and Superman, Earth 1 stories, Doomsday Clock, but I never met him also until New York, and he was nothing like I thought he was going to be in person.
Oh yeah, he's the best.
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's such a good group. Like Jeff really knows if Jeff says, "Oh, we got so and so coming on board," and I'm like, I trust you because Jeff's the best on, like if he vouches for you, and everyone's going to get along. Like he's such a good character person.
So it sounds
That's
like he
awesome.
kind of brought you all together in a way.
Oh, for sure. Not in a way specific. That's exactly how it happened.
Because everyone has one thing in common. We've all worked with Jeff.
Yeah. All roads lead to Jeff.
Next one is for Brad, and it is, what setting or genre do you enjoy coloring the most?
Ooh, I'm having a really good time with Geiger right now. Just the open landscapes, the dust, the atmosphere I could put in there. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. And then I get to really play with the lighting, especially when Geiger ignites, that kind of stuff. Like I just love it. I don't know. I don't have a specific Yvonne. I like working with Yvonne stuff. So I'm really looking forward to the Hyde Street stuff, keeping it slightly pushed to the horror side, but I still want to keep it, still almost like you're watching a movie. So I'm going to try to play off lighting like that, like have some areas dark, but really bring in some key lighting, some key colors, stuff like that. But yeah, nothing. I love the variety of comics. That's why I wanted to get into it in the first place.
We're most looking forward to, of the books not out yet, we spoke about this on our last episode, Hyde Street is at the top for us, although Rockefellers is like a close second. We're both really excited for Yvonne's work. We're big fans of everything he did at DC for many years.
Yeah. Well, and then I got to work on his Ra's al Ghul, The One Bad Day. And he said that was his first graphic novel, like his first one issue book he's ever done.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
That is surprising.
And he's been working since he's been 13 or something, and he's never done a one single issue graphic novel. So that was a lot of fun. That was a cool book.
Did you color any of the other One Bad Days, or just that one, just the Ra's al Ghul one?
Just that one, yeah.
I read them all. It was a good series. I liked that one a lot. It was funny. One thing you said about Geiger, how you're enjoying Geiger. We really spend a lot of time gushing over your use of light and shadow in that desert environment. So it makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
That you feel that way.
And there won't be a lot. I try to stay away from the green stuff, especially, and even in Redcoat, you won't see a lot of red in the book. I want to keep the red for his Redcoat. There'll be
so it stands out.
Yeah, like there'll be variations of red, but nothing, the clean red's going to be for his coat, kind of like Superman's cape,
It's cool. I'm going to think about that now when I read comics, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Next one is for you, Becky, and this is a good question.
It is a good question. It's a little bit more personal. This one's for Rob. We've heard you're an avid outdoorsman when not in the studio, and we actually both love to camp. We take our son camping a lot. We like to go rafting and whatnot. So what do you like to do outdoors? Where are your favorite places?
So I have a lot of interest in the outdoors. So I've backpacked the Beckler River in Yellowstone by myself. I did that when, I guess, 2013. I drove out there, and then I did, I guess, about 50 miles out there. That was my first time in Yellowstone.
And he lettered at the same time too. So
yeah,
that's a pro.
Yeah.
Really?
No.
It was like, what? Do you have the Wi-Fi? Did you have one of those?
Although I have been in in a hunting cabin, sitting there, inking pages back in the days at deer camp. I'm hoping to get back to Yellowstone maybe in the winter. I like to see that there. Just so much beauty out there. I did Glacier National Park. I think 2016. I went out. Same thing. I drove out there by myself and hiked around there. But I hunt about, I guess, about 30 days a year. I do a lot of bird hunting, but I like kayaking. I did some whitewater rafting down in West Virginia with my brother, today's his birthday. Happy birthday, Eric.
Ooh, happy birthday, Eric.
And some cousins from down in Virginia. So we all met in West Virginia to go hit the river gorge there, do some whitewater rafting. Within the last year or so, I bought some property up in the Adirondacks. So I'm working on a tiny little mini cabin up there. But I also do a lot of wildlife and nature photography.
Oh, nice.
So I'm out there, but I've been interested. I mean, I was in Boy Scouts, so since from a very early age.
Our
I
son's
loved it.
in Scouts.
Yeah, good for him.
Good.
So yeah, I went all the way up to Eagle, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Good on you, sir. Well done.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember when I was in 6th grade, I spent the entire summer out in our yard in a tent, just coming in for meals and to get to get hosed down.
Yep.
But yeah, fishing and all that stuff. I love it all.
Thank you for indulging us. We happen to be taking a Cub Scout pack on a camp out this weekend.
Yes. It'll be like herding cats.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have like our real jobs, and then this is like our fun job.
Yeah.
And then we also run a Cub Scout pack.
Oh boy. Oh, you're gonna get
Nick
no
is
sleep.
the Cub Master.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's the treasurer. She does all our fundraising. It's very cool.
I remember. So I was a scout leader for about a year or two in my late teens after I was graduated high school and made Eagle and all that. And I remember, we took the kids out on a camping trip, and these 2 kids in particular were just little hellions, and just would not go to sleep and just keeping us up all night long. And I was driving them home. Say after the camping trip, they were all. I had a Ford F-250 pickup then, and they were going to catch up on their sleep on the ride home, and they were conked out. And
Yeah.
so I waited till a nice quiet stretch of highway, and I let out a scream like we were going to get murdered, and they they bolted up right, and they thought we were going to get run over by a truck, So I said, well, now you know what it's like to to be kept awake. Good luck going back to sleep, kids. They're probably in their 50s now, so
They're still probably terrified of riding in cars.
yeah, I don't think so. I think they're still terrorizing other people.
They didn't learn anything from the experience.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is for both of you, and this might be a quick one. And if the answer is nothing, that's fine. But we really want to know. We just finished our Junkyard Joe Volume 1 deep dive, and in that, the custodian, the guy who creates Junkyard Joe, as far as we know, with as much has been revealed, his glasses when he's not wearing his like face mask thing back in the day in Vietnam are colored in red. And then later he has like the mask, which also like is on one of the covers, like Junkyard Joe 4. It's like the profile that's the same style as like Junkyard Joe's helmet. However, his particular mask has the same red. So is there any significance to that red, or like him seeing the world through rose-colored glasses or something? Like, it just seemed like that it was a detail that was in there for a reason.
I can't remember if that was, God, that was so long ago. I can't remember if that was in the script or if I talked to Gary about it. Usually I'll talk to Gary before something like that. If there's, a new character, a new mask, or new help, like new something. I can't remember if we talked about that before. I think we might have, but yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, it looks cool. I thought so. Comics are supposed to look cool.
So if Ghost Machine fans, you can't see it, but Snoggle's smiling and laughing at me right now, because when I asked this question before, I was convinced there was a deeper meaning. And now since Brad has illuminated us that it just looks cool and it's a comic book, which is almost verbatim what she said to me before, she feels absolutely validated. And
you always want to tie something to a certain character. So I thought, oh, this would be a good opportunity to do something like that. Like it has to be something. I don't want to just do generic stuff. So, but I honestly can't remember. I'll have to think about that. Like,
make up something.
Nick's big fan theory was like, well, he's got rose-colored glasses. Maybe it has something to do with like he sees the world. What was it, Nick?
No, I was just saying it didn't make sense to me. Like, someone who sees the world through rose-colored glasses sees the world a little bit better than it is. And this character didn't seem to be doing that. So I was just curious if it had something to do with his background that we missed or something like that. This is brutal. So I realize it's just because it looks cool. And it does look cool. And it does actually, like, I'll take you want to identify each character with something of that nature, because I'll always think of that when I think of the custodian. We've got one more that Snoggle's going to read before we get to the listener mail section, which we're incorporating the creators into, which is exciting.
This question is for Brad. We've seen a lot of your awesome cover art. Can we expect you to ever appear as a main artist on future books?
Oh man, that means I would have to take a day off in order to do something. Oh, who knows what? Yeah, it depends. Like, I'm so busy right now. There's no time to get stuff. I was working on that Junkyard Joe image. I had it. I think it was around issue 6 or something. I thought I had this idea, so I was working it up, and I finally just finished it, like just as the hardcover was coming out. So I thought I'd better get it done. But yeah, I'd like to, for sure. I'm always kind of drawing when I can if I'm sitting around, but I'm so busy with the color work and that kind of stuff. There's just no time.
You're still going to do like variant covers though, right?
If there's an opportunity for me to do like maybe a cover for a second printing or a variant cover, and I have time or an idea or something, I'll run it past, Brian or Cunningham and those guys and see. But I would definitely do that.
Nice.
It's just when time permits. That's all.
I saw another Junkyard. Didn't you do a Junkyard Joe one with Joe and Emily and Will and Grace with the family?
That was the one. That was that image I was working on. I had that idea for, I think, ever since issue 6, and I had it penciled, and I thought, I better get it done. So I just recently did it just to get it finished, because the hardcover is coming out. So I thought, I might as well get it done and just promote it. So that's what I ended up doing.
Gotcha.
I love doing that kind of stuff when I have time.
Is that going to be an oversized hardcover similar to the Geiger one that just came out?
I don't think it's oversized.
We'll keep an eye out for the cover that you did on that. I've seen it on Instagram, when you were finishing it, which was really cool.
Yeah, I see. That's just that was just for me to do.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be a cover or anything.
Oh, that's cool though. And do you still have that on your Instagram if people want to check it out? If people don't know what I'm talking about, is it posted on your Instagram or was it just a story?
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I have the black and white, and then I have the full colored version, because I had the idea of having the crosshairs on them, and I just always wanted to have it done because I had this image in my head of putting the glowing crosshairs.
Cool. We have a few more questions for you, gentlemen, and this next one does not come from us. It comes from one of our listeners, because as you may know, we have started a segment recently called Listener Mail. And when we started that segment by asking the Ghost Machine fans out there to email us at ghostmachinefans@gmail.com, we were inundated with questions and comments that we now have a line that we want to get through, a queue, as it were. So the question this time, which I thought we would pose to you both, and Snoggle and I can answer this one as well, is from Andy S. Andy gave us some fantastic feedback about the show. He said that he loves it and would like us to continue going on. So thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate that. His questions are, who is your favorite author or genre outside of Ghost Machine? And what type of work of fiction do you enjoy rereading the most? Is there something you've just read a million times and you could pick it up again and read it, even if it's not a comic?
Well, I think I'm kind of an outlier in this business. I don't read comic books other than the ones that I'm working on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm the ones that I read them obviously as I'm working on them, and the ones that we're working on now for Ghost Machine, I really enjoy. From a fan standpoint, but it's been a long time since I've actually just read series, decades.
Wow. Okay.
Likely. So I don't read a lot of fiction. I read, if I'm going to read anything, it tends to be nonfiction.
Okay.
And I think it may be because it's a departure from the day job. My life isn't fiction, so when I do have time to read books, I like historical books, or if I'm going to read fiction, a lot of times it's going to be like historical fiction, along the lines of like Da Vinci Code or Devil in the White City, something like that, which may be, it's one of the reasons that Redcoat really appeals to me, because it kind of fits into that mold. But I like to learn things, and a lot of times truth is stranger than fiction. So So that's where, my entertainment usually comes from, the nonfiction zone. But I did pick up a couple of books. I do have some summer reading that I'll get to. Author by the name of C.J. Box, that my mom of all people turned me on to, and it's a series of books about a game warden, and so
Oh, yeah?
that kind of fits in, with my other interests.
Okay. Well, for a guy who doesn't read much, that was a pretty good rundown.
Yeah.
Well, I know
I've
how
read
to read.
every single one of Eric Larson's books.
Yeah,
His historical nonfiction, or I think it's nonfiction, is so good. He
Yeah.
weaves a story while you're also learning.
yeah. Yeah, and Meltzer has written stuff along the lines of that too. So that'll be on my summer reading list as well. My beach reads.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Anything Brad Meltzer writes, it's a must read, right?
For sure.
Yeah. But the Man Without Fear, I probably read, I don't even know, dozens of times. I just find it, when you finish reading it, you feel like you just watched a movie. Like it has that kind of pace to it. And yeah, I just love it. So I always keep it. I've lent it to tons of people like who don't even know anything about comics. Okay, well, read this. And they read it and like, oh my God, that was so awesome. Like, but now there's all kinds of Ghost Machine stuff that we can get into. I know, yeah, like Redcoat's going to be huge for historical people too, because there's lots of little, lot of reference for actual stuff. So it's going to be cool.
Well, I think the reason that the Ghost Machine stuff is so appealing to a wider audience than what's typical is because it doesn't pigeonhole itself at all, right? Like there are a lot of familiar tropes in it, and something Jeff excels at is he takes the trope that we're familiar with and he injects it with something totally foreign to make us fixate on what's entertaining about this new thing rather than what we're already familiar with. But it's easier to digest because there's an aspect of familiarity there, at least for me. And so I think you make a great point about like the new readership that the Ghost Machine can take on. We put a funny video out there a while ago about somebody goes to a comic book store and they're kind of, everything's the same and they're used to reading the same comics and the same stories and the same ideas. And then there's Ghost Machine and it's super different. And it's not just different because it's an independent thing and like all the neat stuff that you guys educated us about. From a content standpoint, it's completely different than anything on the rack. Like it's not even technically like superhero stuff per se necessarily, even though there are powers and magic and things like that involved. You almost can't really define it, even though Rook kind of falls in the post-apocalyptic range, I think.
Mm-hmm.
My answer to this, and then we need Snoggle's definitive answer other than Eric Larson, is I have some books that no matter how stressful life gets, no matter how exhausted I get, I can pick them up and I can read them. And it's because of how they affect me emotionally, no matter how many times I can read them. And all the Ghost Machine books up to this point are those books for me. So that's why I'm as invested in them as I am. I've read Junkyard Joe 1 through 6 and Geiger 1 through 6 probably over 10 times because of
that's the beauty of Jeff's writing is he makes you fall in love, like connect to the character, and then that character is going on this journey throughout the books, right? Like Redcoat, you're getting to know Simon right away, and then now you're like, oh, now Simon, the guy I know, is running into Albert Einstein. Now he's going to run in. Now he's going on this journey. So you're growing with this character emotionally. There's some really cool stuff coming up. Well, you'll just be like, you'll really get to know who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of that, just the way he's writing it.
And Jeff always takes me in a direction where I didn't see it happening. I'm zigging and he's zagging. So it really, it's not a formula. He really keeps me on my toes as a reader and really makes that experience that much better. And yes, getting back to, the emotions, Jeff is somebody who, as we learned about from his shout out earlier, Jeff fosters relationships, in real life. And this is something that really matters to him. And it really shows in his writing, It's just like, it's a hallmark of a Jeff story. These are not just robots in costumes.
Oh, he makes you fall in love with their pets.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
Yes, he does.
He's incredible. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
He
he
really,
does.
he really knows how to, pull those strings.
He makes you fall in love with their two-headed radioactive pets.
Yeah,
I know, it's so
That's
awesome.
what it is. This was our last question before we thank you guys for coming, but I wanted to let Snoggle give us her answer there. So you do a lot of reading. You do a ton of reading, even though it's not all comics.
I read a lot.
Yeah.
I am a book, one would say nerd, which in my opinion is like a badge I will wear proudly.
Oh, yeah.
But I go back and forth. Like sometimes I just want to read a book that's like a whodunit, very classic example of a murder mystery. I love science fiction books. I read a lot of fantasy novels that, magic and intricate worlds. But lately, I would say in the past couple of years, I have and I would just recommend this book to anybody. I've made people forcefully, I'm like, you have to read this. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It is crazy how good this book is. They're going to make a movie of it. He also did The Martian, which was made into a movie with Matt Damon. But he does a lot of
It's very smart.
impossible to win scenarios. And usually it's just like one person almost the entire time. I've reread Project Hail Mary since it came out about 5 to 6 times.
Oh, wow.
In the midst of all my murder mysteries.
Well, that's the thing about a good book. I remember as a child, when you first started reading books, and I remember being, sad at the end, and my mom saying, how well it's like you just lost a friend because you've finished it, but the beauty is then you can go back and reread it and then glean different things from it that you missed the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
We should have had you holding that microphone so you could drop it in that moment. That was pretty good. So, thank you so much for joining us tonight on our 11th episode, answering all our questions, letting us interrogate you. I know I speak for a lot of folks that listen to the podcast and check out the Instagram when we say the work that you are doing is affecting us in a positive way every single day. It's the source of an enormous amount of happiness for us. And I can absolutely not find the words other than telling you that if someone was to offer me any comic book in the planet that was a Ghost Machine comic book in any condition, signed by who knows how many people, or to have this conversation with you all, Snoggle and I would both take this conversation every single time. So we cannot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
just
very nice.
Can't tell you
Absolutely.
enough how much it means.
Yeah, thank you guys for all you're doing too. It's amazing. Like I love watching your content. It's just I automatically put it up on my story, and yeah, it's good. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are part of the team in a sense. We know our readers and the the podcasters, the people who are organizing, like yourselves, are really vital to the process, and we're very grateful for your support and for your interest, and hopefully for your continued support and interest.
I have no doubt that you'll have it, and you guys doing things like this is what is keeping the fan community embroiled with fervor, and we will continue onward. I think I said to one of you recently in a post, here's to every one of these series getting to 100 issues plus, and I believe that that's going to happen. So as usual, at the end of the episode, I say, Snoggle, do you have anything else to add?
Oh my gosh. So much pressure. Well, I was going to thank you guys. Like in the world of everyone binges content, right? A show comes out, you're able to watch everything. Like the world has changed to that extent. Even with books, they'll wait till the whole series comes out. You guys have created something for me that I'm like, I gotta wait for the next book. And it's created a lot of excitement, I know, for the community and for me and Nick personally. So just thank you guys so much. It is really a pleasure to read these books and getting to kind of see it unfold in real time. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
cranking them out as fast as we can, so be patient.
Well, a little bit of patience is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as usual, thanks very much for joining us on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.
Podcast.